Welcome to the College Scout USA show where we dive into the world of college soccer. I am Tom Irving, and each episode we speak with coaches, players, and experts to help you understand the pathway to playing college soccer in the United States. Today I'm joined by Levesque, who spent 14 years as the head women's soccer coach at University of Maine at Fort Kent, while also spending several years as assistant director of athletics. How are you doing today, Lucas?
Good, Tom. Appreciate you having me, and anxious to talk a little bit about my experiences and how it might help some young kids in Europe.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be good. So let's just dive right into it. So I spoke briefly there about your history. How did you get into uni coaching? What was your pathway into taking up that role at UMFK?
Yes, part of it was right place, right time for me. I was born and raised in Fort Kent, in northern Maine, and went away to college and knew that I wanted to get into coaching, and spent a year as an assistant at Thomas College where I went to school, and was actually going to take over their women's program, but my wife now, she was heading into her senior year. So I'd graduated, I was 2 years older. So she was in her senior year, I would have been her coach. So they decided to wait and have the men's coach to coach both. Long story. But then I went back to Maine, Fort Kent, spent in a season as the men's assistant, kind of while waiting for things to play out. And my plan was to go back to Thomas and take over their women's program. But next thing you know, a full-time job opened up in athletics. I ended up taking over women's basketball and women's soccer, and then stayed for 14 years, and had had a really good run. Coached some really great kids, and it was a tremendous experience for me to be able to build something special in my hometown.
Yeah, I forgot that you actually took the basketball team as well. That must have been a bit different having to run two sports, but luckily they're opposing, spring, winter season, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the travel just killed you, but it was a good experience. It taught me a lot about just leadership and developing cultures, and really kind of growing, because there's two different. My soccer locker room and my basketball locker room was completely different. Really, like, I mean, those, I did both for 8 years. So really, that to me, that's like 16 years of coaching experiences, because you see so much. And part of what I want to talk about, and what we'll talk about a little bit today, obviously, is culture, and providing a good experience for kids, and making sure, you only have one college experience, and you want to make sure that these are the best years of your life. So you want to make sure that you enjoy it, and then you provide these opportunities for kids to look back 10, 15, 20 years down the road to say that, my time in college was the best years of my life. So, I learned through those experiences, what was important to me and what type of culture we wanted to have in our locker room. So it was grueling at times doing both, but it also helped me grow pretty quick as a coach.
Yeah, and it worked because without blowing your own trumpet too much, you were a very successful coach up in northern Maine. I'm sure you've got all the stats written down in your it's somewhere just sitting around there. Maybe it's on the wall right behind you. But what? How many national champions did you win? It was it the two, just the one? I can't remember. Several.
We had gone through it again. The women's side was a little, but we had won 6 out of 7. And we lost 1 year. That was Kamika's junior year. We had a really good group of seniors. We lost 1-0 in double overtime, I think, to Damon. But yeah, we had a good group. I would have liked to have seen how we did in the NAIA level. I would have liked to have seen us play in the national tournament there. I think in 2016, when we had a good group of seniors. We also had Jen and Sharifa. Jen had at least a dozen starts with Gotham FC in the NWSL, and then Sharifa was unbelievable. I think you were gone there, but these were two kids who played on the Ghana national team that were. It was a little unfair at times because they were really good.
Yeah, yeah. And just for listeners who don't know, so the Fort Kent were for a while in the USCAA, United States. I've forgotten
A Collegiate Athletic Association.
so many letters, which is a quite small and not as well known association, but it's pretty much teams from NAIA, really, at the end of the day. Then did the women's side move over to NIA again, like the men's side did, or was it just the men that did that?
Yeah, so what happened is the conference in the Northeast, the NAIA conference in the Northeast, in the late 2000s, basically dissolved. And then we were like, okay, well, we could try to go D2, which is a tough business model just because there's no D2 schools in the state of Maine. We could have been an NAIA independent, but probably the easiest pathway was just to go through the USCAA and go there. And on the men's side, I mean, you can attest the men's side was loaded. The women's side was growing certainly, and but I mean, it ended up working out. The NAI would have been nice, but I think that just again, all the New York schools transitioned. Most of the New York schools transitioned to D2, and that was kind of the final straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the NAIA in the Northeast.
Yeah, and like some people would kind of at the time it might have been a bit harder to recruit players at that level just because it was a kind of unknown organization. But like you mentioned, Kamika played against the USA for Trinidad Tobago national team. I can't remember how many caps she got, but she got a lot, and she trained with us sometimes, and I don't know how anyone scored against her. Like there's a difference in strength between men's and women's, right? Obviously, men's shots are a little bit stronger, and she had no problem dealing with our shooting, never mind, women's shooting. So I don't understand how it was unfair to have the likes of Kamika in your team. She was like 6'1" or something as well, I'm sure. She was massive. Definitely a bit of an outstand any level, never mind a smaller level at USCA. But yeah, it was brilliant. We had some absolutely amazing talent on the men's side as well. And I think it kind of helped us at the time because I think the entry requirements to the league was a little bit, to the organisation, USCA, was a little bit more lenient. So we had some players that probably wouldn't have been eligible in like the NIA. And so, yeah, I think it probably helped us in the end, to be fair. Had a lot of great times in UMFK. Yeah, so what are you doing now then? So you've moved on from university coaching and you've moved down to Georgia, kind of followed in my footsteps. You moved down to about an hour away from where I was living after I left Maine.
Yeah, so we basically through a mutual friend, I got connected with an organization here. It's a I've been running a soccer club now. This is heading into my 8th year, and basically, it's just a really good opportunity for my family to, my kids were young. I think when we moved down here, Abby was probably like 9 years old. Soph was, I think, like 4 or 5, and just opened so many doors for now Abby, my oldest just graduated. My youngest is going into 8th grade. They both turned into be pretty good soccer players and just had a really good experience and just so many more opportunities. We're an hour from Atlanta, so we'll probably catch a World Cup game next summer and concerts and Atlanta United. Now the MLS, so it was really shocking when I moved south. Like people care about the MLS down here, but that those games are really fun. They get a really good fan base. So really, it was just an opportunity for me and our family to experience something different and really kind of grow and open more doors for our kids. And I work for a really good I work for a YMCA technically, but we have this amazing park. We got probably 25 fields, do a lot from the community. When I got here, we had about 320 travel players. I think we had like, I don't know, like 19 teams from basically like U9 to U19. Now we're at, I think, 32 teams. We have over 500 kids playing travel soccer, and it's great because now I'm kind of on the other side of things. Now we're trying to place kids. We're trying to get kids into college and open more doors for them. So, but it's been great. We love the city of Rome. Is really cool. It's not too big. Obviously, coming from Fort Kent, Maine, where there's really no traffic and really slow paced here, it's a little bit faster, but not quite Atlanta fast. So, but yeah, been here for 8 years, and we're about ready to build a new indoor facility that is really for basketball, but we're going to run a lot of futsal programming out of that stuff. So we're continuing to expand what we have going on here, which is cool.
No, that's great. And do you miss the college game, or is it something you're looking to get back into, or is it something it's a different part of your life and you've just with it?
I mean, to be fair, what the big thing right now is the youth game. Like there was some opportunities, but the pay for college coaching right now isn't great, and there's a lot more pressure and a lot more stress. I love the recruiting side. I love the team building. I mean, the best part about coaching is you get to shop for your groceries. So how hard you work and the time you put in and the commitment you put to recruiting makes fall so much easier. You got to recruit the right kids, and you got to recruit good teammates and people who can have the right mindset for a common goal. I mean, I do miss a lot of the aspects of the college game. I'm not sure what the future is going to hold, but there's definitely part of me that would like to make one more run and get back into it. But for now, we like what we're doing, and our club is pretty mission driven in terms of being able to change kids' lives through the sport of soccer. So it might be tough to leave, but that door will probably never close, if that makes sense.
It would be hard to say no to it, like especially if the right option came along. I'm trying to think of my geography right now. What's the closest university to you?
Well, so there's two right here, Berry College here in in Rome, which is phenomenal. I mean, just a beautiful um, school. They're D3, but and then there's Shorter University, which is D2 school here. Like Dalton State, Dalton State on the men's side, they just won the national title on the men's side for NAIA. So that's their coach. Their coach actually was at Florida College. So the coach that just won the national title at Dalton State was at Florida College, I believe, when you were there. So you probably played against him. He went from Florida College to Dalton State, and then they won the national title. And now I think he took a D1 assistant. He's the associate head coach at a D1 school now. But Dalton State's got a pretty good program, very affordable. It's a lot like UMaine Fort Kent in terms of state school affordability and just lightning in a bottle, right place, right time. But they've been really good for the last couple of years, so it's cool to see.
Yeah, that's cool. And you mentioned a few the kind of really different types of schools there, and that takes us on to what we're going to speak about today is um, kind of finding the right fit for you as a player when you're looking to move into the college game. And a lot of people I'm going to be working with, or majority of people, will be people coming from the UK, Europe, or maybe Australia, and it's quite hard when you don't understand the landscape of American college soccer. You've maybe never been to the USA, you don't know, much about it at all, and you're going in blind and you're thinking, okay, right, I want to go to America, I want to play soccer, but that's all you know. So finding the right fit and knowing how to find the right fit is something you've got a lot of experience with. You were a coach for a long time, both basketball, soccer. So we're gonna go to you now to kind of take us through some of your kind of tips to find the right fit, find the college university that is right for you.
Yeah, I think part of this is figuring out what do you as a student athlete want, and some of that is so I'll look at your experience at Maine Fort Kent. When you walked in there were 25 grown men on your team, and you were fighting for table scraps to get onto the field. Had you
That
gone,
sounds bad. Is that what you're trying to say?
no, no,
That's
no, no,
quite
but
bad than I was.
no, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying is you had five elite players, and then there were 20 guys that were all very talented. And the difference between number 6 on the depth chart, number 25 on the depth chart wasn't big.
Yeah,
So, it was one of those things where you could flip a coin whether you might see the field that day. But,
yeah,
there were guys on the bench that would be, starters at, some really, really good programs. So that really what I'm trying to say is, do you want to go into an ultra competitive environment where you're fighting for table scraps every day and you don't know what the future is going to hold? Or do you want to go to some place where you could leave a legacy and be a starter, and you're not going to be as competitive, you're not going to win as many games, but you might be. So I look at this as like, had you gone to Maine Presque Isle, Tom Irving's probably a Hall of Famer, right? If you go to UMaine Fort Kent, right, you're one of 25 dudes that are just fighting to get on the field.
yeah.
So that to me is a big piece of what you want out of this. I mean, if you look at the travel side of things and you look at youth soccer, do you want to be a bench player on the top team, or do you want to be the leading goal scorer on the second team? So that's something that kids really need to consider, because psychologically, that it's tough for a kid when, I mean, how many freshmen come to the States and don't see the field their first year? And they were, if you go at Fort Kent, you had those 25 dudes who could all play. Every single one of those kids, to an extent, growing up was an all-star, was the man on their team and everything else. And now you're like, dang, like I may not get on the field this year because we got too many good players. So those
Yeah.
are all things that kids need to look at and figure out, what do you really want? And I mean, you've seen it, being at Point and being at Nebraska and then being at Fort Kent, just balancing that, the competitive aspect of it, and really what you're looking for. So I would say that's the first thing in identifying. The other thing is, you got to know what you're getting into, right? Like Fort Kent, Maine is not for everybody. I mean, you're talking about a rural, small, there's not a whole lot going on in that town, but it's quaint, it's cozy, you're comfortable, you're surrounded by people who really care about you. So does that small, comfortable environment, is that what you're looking for? Or do you want to be in a city where you can do your own thing? Nobody really even knows who you are when you're walking down the street, and you can just kind of be your own person. So those are two completely different campus environments. I think Jamie went to, was it St. Peter's that Jamie went to?
Yeah. Yeah. He went to St. Peter's. Yeah.
So, I'm assuming he's not far from New York City. So his experience from going from Fort Kent to the city, I mean, night and day. So you got to look at what type of life you want to, what type of campus life that you want, and then obviously the competitive environment. So those are two pieces initially that you got to kind of figure out what you want to do, and how you want to shape your college experience.
Yeah. And with when looking at the competitive side of things, it is really important to kind of set your own expectations and to understand how good you are and have someone who's going to be honest with you and tell you the truth, nicely, obviously. Like, I think going into my time at UMFK, looked at it as, it's like a small school. There's some people from all over the world here, but I'm me, I'm arrogant. I think I'm going to be one of the best players. And I kind of didn't expect it to be as good as it was. And this is a different era now. Like, there's a lot more footage now, and it's much easier to watch a team. Where back then, I think I might have maybe watched one game or some highlights of some goals or something, like the season's goals or something like that. I didn't watch anything apart from that, so I had no clue what I was getting into, kind of. But I thought, and I was expecting to be playing all the time. And I don't know if Ashby, my coach at the time, maybe, I don't know if what he would say on this, but maybe I was a bit disappointed, or maybe I was, don't know how to say it, like, it doesn't make me sound bad, but like disappointed, or what's the word? Just a little bit annoyed that I wasn't playing, and maybe I wasn't trying hard enough off the field to kind of make it into the first team. I know some people were, in the gym every day, and I wasn't quite a lot. I lived with Luca Odak for a while, and he was heavy into the gym and who'd get me into the gym all the time, and I was working my ass off quite often. Yeah, I think it took me a while to get to that point where I realized, oh, I'm not just going to walk into this team after, just going to training every day. I actually have to do something extra to be better than these players that are ahead of me. So yeah, I think it took me a while to get there, but I think, yeah, I was definitely in that experience of not knowing what the standard was like. So I would suggest watching the team would be pretty important, and actually knowing your own skills and your own abilities, and really just being realistic with yourself of the standard you're going to, because there's a vast difference between top D1 schools and like the bottom D3 schools or what have you. Not many people are going to move from the UK to a D3 school, but like the bottom NAIA or bottom of any of the divisions will be a huge difference from the top. Um, and it's really important to understand your ability. What would you say would be a good tip for people who are kind of looking to move over? And like, so you mentioned the ability, the standard and stuff, and the school, the area it's in, the type of and the campus and stuff. How would you say would be the best way to learn about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I tell a lot of the players that come through here is, look at retention, right? Like, I want to look at rosters from year. I want to look at their 2012, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. Is there consistency within the roster? Are people coming and going? Is there a lot of turnover? If there's a lot of turnover, to me, there's either something wrong with a coach or something wrong with a school, or maybe a combination of both, right? One of the things that I look back on is, I think I could name maybe two kids that left our program over. So forget the wins and the losses, forget, the success we had on the field. what I want to see, what I look at a lot is what I pride myself on is not a lot of kids left our program, right? Like that tells me that we did something right, that culture wise, we built something pretty special where kids wanted to stay and wanted to be a part of this. And I think as you look for schools, because I mean, you don't hear it much certainly as much on the D2 side, but D1 athletics is can be rough. There's a lot of these kids, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of issues. I mean, it really is a job, and not everywhere. Some D1 coaches do a fantastic job, but for the most part, it's a toxic environment at times. And you have these coaches that are just trying to climb the ladder, and they really, they're just pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to get the most out of you so that they can win and then take the next job. So to me, those are things you want to avoid. I think as you look through, retention is a big one. If kids are enjoying their experience there and they're happy, right? It's going to be a happy locker room. There's going to be some good team chemistry. They're all pushing for that common goal, right? To be the best. Let's be the best that we can be as a group. So that is a key thing to me that I would strongly suggest for players to get a good idea. How well does a coach communicate? How do others talk about the coaching staff? Try to schedule a Zoom call or Google Meet or whatever. Schedule a call with some players and talk with them. And they're not going to come out and say, yeah, coach is a jerk or this, that, and the other stuff. But if you say, hey, tell me about your coach, tell me about, supportive are they? Like, what is your team, And if the girls kind of giggle and then give a big answer, you probably, or the, like, that's a pretty good telltale sign of maybe there's something a little bit off here, or maybe you need to dig into that a little bit. But because, like I said, the last thing you do is go to a school where everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody's just trying to get ahead of the person next to them. There's not a lot of support amongst each other, especially coming from as an international player. You want to go someplace where it's home, right? Find a school that for the next 4 years you're going to call home, and you're going to be sad to leave. And if you can find that, that's fantastic. And that's where I think your experience is in going through your organization. The landscape. I mean, you've been to the Northeast, you've been to the Southeast, you've been to the Midwest, right? You have a pretty good idea of the landscape here. So your knowledge will really help grow and really help these kids to grow and to get to where they want to be and to have a good college experience because, not a lot of them, sometimes it's a crapshoot and doing your research and finding out a little bit more about the school you're getting into and what that locker room and what that, and even what the academic environment is. So I think that's a key part.
Yeah, and I think that the locker room is it's something I don't think people think about as much as, do they have the degree I want? Do I like the coach? And the players you're going to be playing with, they're going to be your best mates. Majority of the time, it's quite cliquey in college athletics a lot of the time where, soccer players will play with soccer players, not play with, they're not children. Soccer players will socialize with soccer players, hockey players will socialize with hockey players. And there is some where people are friends across multiple teams. I was friends with everyone. I had mates in the lacrosse team, football team, basketball team, hockey teams. I was friends with everyone. But a lot of the time, your best friends are going to be from, your immediate team and squad. And understanding kind of the differences in upbringings and what their culture's like is going to be really big. I remember one time at Fort Kent, this is my first kind of culture shock, I think it was, realizing that, Scotland isn't the everything, the world isn't just Scotland. There's a bigger world out there. So I was walking around the locker room just as we do in Britain, we'll walk around naked, right? So I was walking around and no one was bothered. You get the Americans going into the locker to change their shorts and stuff. Canadians would do that as well. The British boys would just walk around naked. And I was like standing trying to speak to one of the Jamaicans or Trinidadians, and they were angry that I was standing there naked because in their culture they don't do that. And they were getting really angry at me, and I didn't know what was going on. They were speaking with their strong accents in patois, and I had no clue what was going on. And it was Orlando actually just brought me aside. He was like, actually, like in our culture, we don't do that. And I was like, oh really? Okay, I didn't know that. And I was like, sorry guys, put my shorts on and like went past it. But like small things like that, I know that's not a huge deal, but there's going to be things that come up and cultural things. Religion's got a really big one in America. Is everyone heavily religious in your team? Things like that are going to come up. and things you wouldn't even think about, like my little story there, are going to really influence your locker room. I feel like I get on with everyone, and I was friends with people from every country that we played with. We had across my schools, we had people from every continent really, and probably 30, 40 countries. I think I got on with a lot of them, but there's definitely countries that you'll get on differently with different nationalities and stuff. I think, which is not saying you need to be closed-minded and just go somewhere that's full of British people so you can find another British best friend or anything. It's more finding out more about their actual cultures and what makes them them and stuff. I rambled on there for a while there. What other things do you think kind of influence that locker room experience? Is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it too is just, everybody's got differences, right? Like we had, in our locker room, we had our the Quebec clan is a
Mm,
little bit different than the Ontario kids and the
yeah,
California kids and then the Caribbean kids and then the Maine kids. So part of that is as a coach, how do I get all those groups together? Coach Ashby's the same way in terms of, man, how do I get my European kids to work together with my Jamaican kids and then my Canadian kids. So that juggling act is important. And, from a coaching standpoint, and again, some coaches are great communicators. Some are terrible via phone and email and text, but they're great in person. But again, you want to find a leader and you want to find a coach that you want to follow, that motivates you and can get the most out of you. And we've all played for coaches who are tactically and in soccer brilliant, but socially completely out to lunch. And you got others that are great salespeople and really good at, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to have this, we're going to have that. And then there's zero follow through because at the end of the day, they're just trying to make a living. So, finding that right leader and finding that right coaching staff that's going to get the most out of you, that you're going to relate with, that's going to keep you motivated and get the most out of you. I think that's a key part of it too. So trying to build a relationship with your coach. And again, for you guys, it's for the most part, it's going to be virtually. But the good news is as you continue to grow your network, and you got a pretty good network being in the States as long as you were, that's going to be a key thing, is being able to find people. For me, the biggest thing I wanted to do is I wanted to get kids from all these different pockets. And my job was to make sure that every kid that came in my program, whether they were a top player or a bottom player, had a great experience. So they went back to their club coaches and they went back to their junior college coach, or they went back to their high school coach. And they said, man, I love my time in Maine. Coach Lucas was awesome. That way, when I called that guy back or that gal back, they wanted to send more players to me. And, so my mindset was always take care of every kid that comes in our program, because even if they're not an elite player, right? Their best friend, their cousin, one of their teammates might be the ringer that's gonna lead us for 4 years. So continue to build those relationships. But for players, who can you trust? And for you as the leader of your organization, finding coaches in America that you can trust, that are going to take care of your kids, that you can go into parents' living rooms and say, look, I feel I'm the most confident that when you go to this school, your coach is going to take care of you. So I think that's a big thing too, is finding and being able to find somebody who's going to get the most out of you. So I mean, you've been there, right? You're the leader of your organization, help set the tone for your experience. And finding that person that motivates you, that gets you into the gym, that gets you out of your comfort zone. Like for you, like I was allergic to the weight room. Probably in Scotland, I would assume you weren't much of a lifter,
no
just because
comment.
you were kind of built like me. So when you went to Fort Canyon, you're like, man, I got to get in the weight room. I got to do something that makes me uncomfortable, but I know it's going to push me to get better, because that's the only way I'm gonna get consistent playing time, because I'm on a team full of all stars.
Yeah, I was unluckily enough to become mates with like so Jeremy, Luca, George, all them who just loved the gym and were in the gym all day, every day. And I was mates with them, so I got dragged along to do all that, unfortunately. And I enjoyed it actually, and it helped me. And I got a degree as a strength and conditioning coach as well. So I guess it did lead to some good stuff. But yeah, was there anything kind of maybe red flags that came up when you were speaking to potential players that you just thought, okay, this isn't going to be a good fit for me?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we always try to avoid is selfish players. So the one thing I would always, because one player more on the girls' side, I think, than the men's side, but even on the men's side, right? If your star player is a me focused guy or gal, it really changes the locker room, right? Like if your star player's not happy and they're sulking, it drags a lot of energy out of there. So, I mean, the biggest thing is, every time I'd ask, my first question when I talk to a coach is, what type of teammate is she? Right? What motivates her? How competitive is she? And is she a good teammate? And if you can find somebody who's a good teammate and is super competitive, right? Like that's the DNA that we want for players in our program. And I think for you, that's the tricky part too, is right. Like if I'm you, I don't want to take kids that are selfish, that are me focused, because if I send them to the States, that coach on the flip side, that coach is going to call back and said, Tom, I don't want any more. I don't know if I want any more kids from your program. Right. So if you're a kid watching this video, right, like coaches at the college level are not going to put up with, this me mentality and I'm going to sulk every time I don't get my way. If you're not happy, you put your head down and work. You get in the weight room, you do extra sprints, you get touches on your own, you change your diet. Like these are all things that you can do to get better as a player and to push yourself. But I think that's those were red flags to me in terms of talking with coaches and again, what type of teammate is she? Is she pretty supportive, or if she doesn't get her way, and you could say, well, I mean, she's, for the most part, she's good. Like, then you're like, okay, red flag right there. Like, this kid, I need to make sure that she's the right fit for us as well. And that was much easier to do once we got better. Um, once we became pretty darn good and we had 24, 25 kids in our program, I could certainly be a lot more selective. And that made things easier to kind of hold that standard a little bit. Certainly if you're a kid out there, your mindset and your mentality, if you don't have that team first approach, you'll probably struggle at the next level and struggle, competitively. And you're going to be that kid who, may not have the best experience. And that might be a you problem and not a coach problem.
And was there any kind of players that you made a bad decision on, and they weren't the right fit? Maybe not a bad decision, wasn't a bad decision that they were bad people or anything, but they just weren't right fit for your program.
Yeah, I mean, we made it work. So look, we had, I mean, we have three. So the tricky balance is, like the Wayne Rooney effect, right? Like if you have a number nine who's super special, like sometimes what makes those number nine special is they have that mindset of I'm going to score goals. And they sometimes, number nines, they need to be selfish. They need to be greedy. So there's times where you don't want to extract that out, but there's also times where you got to say, hey, just because you're having a bad day, don't make other people have a bad day. And look, I mean, I think you probably saw some of them. We had three just phenomenal goal scorers. I mean, Kat and Witt both scored 100 goals in our program. Donique was as talented as just about anybody we had when she was on, and they were all true number nines that at times could be challenging. And I was a young, stubborn coach at times, so I was not the easiest guy to play for either in certain situations. So there was definitely some butting of the heads, but never to the point where. And my job again was just to make them a little bit better, right? Like, I need you to understand this point I'm trying to make. I need you to understand this point I'm trying to make. And slowly but surely, we kind of were able to change that mindset a little bit. And again, all of them were, fantastic kids, fantastic players. So by all means, I'm not saying that we made any mistakes there, but there was some coaching that had to be done to just slowly kind of get them a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit more team focused without losing that killer instinct in the box and losing that number nine mentality of shit, I'm here to score goals.
And like they are all brilliant players. You would never say no to any of them, thinking on their side, if they're coming into a program where someone the season before, let's just think, try to think, Donique would have come when Whitney was a sophomore, maybe, was that right? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So she would have already scored 50 goals for the school when she plays in your position. Maybe Donique should have been looking elsewhere, because that's going to be a really hard position to come and take. And then Cat came, what would have been about that time as well. So yeah, you had three players all that could easily score 2, 3 goals a game, all competing for one, maybe two positions. So from your point, absolutely no reason for you to say no to them. Like you could never say no to any of those players. They're all fantastic players. But from their point of view, it could have been a good idea to explore somewhere where their star forward just graduated and there's a place for you to play for 4 years as a star forward, replacing, someone who's clearly getting chances. They're scoring goals, so there must be lots of chances getting created and support, and they could enter as, a direct replacement for that kind of player. And that kind of takes us back to doing our research and watching the team and kind of looking at the rosters and yeah, basically just doing your research on the school that you're going to, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think one of them, like Wit, for example, I mean, I think she was more of like she just wanted to win. You know what I mean? Like she wanted, I think her stats were important, but I think her stats were legitimately number two. Like she wanted to win. She wanted to. I was always that type of player that when I walked off the field, I just wanted to look at my opponent and wink and be like, "We're better than you," right? Like that was, and even as a coach, like I'm just super competitive that way, and I think she had that in her, and that's what you want, right? You just want kids that say, even when I'm not at my best, right? I may not have scored today. I may have pissed away a couple goal scoring opportunities, or I was a C player today when I needed to be an A player, but we got the win, and I'm just as happy because at the end of the day, that's all I care about, right? So can you find players like that? Can you have that right mindset? But now, things are much different. Obviously, this was back in, I mean, I think I was at Fort Kent from 2004 to 2017. Now with the transfer portal and all the craziness that's going on, it's a much different world. So, when you have the number, your top goal scorer, and you have that kid nipping at their heels, like you said, now it's so easy to, if you're that number two option, goalkeepers is a prime example, right? Like it's hard to keep two or three solid goalkeepers on your roster because if that freshman is number three, who's very, very, very good, but there's a kid a year above them, who's also very good, you're splitting hairs. I mean, you look at Jamie and Butch, you're splitting hairs, right? Like they're both, one day one's better, slightly better than the other, but either, I think Ashby would have been happy to have either one of those guys in goal. They're both fantastic players. So, but now with the transfer portal, it's so crazy how things have changed. So, that's something that, I don't know a whole lot about because my era wasn't necessarily with this portal, but that's something that kids are going to have to navigate through. And I was always a loyalty guy. Like I was going to be always going to be super loyal to my players, and I wanted my players to be super loyal to our program. Not to me. Like if you didn't like me, so be it. But I need you to be loyal to your teammates. I need you to be loyal to this program. I need you to be loyal to this institution, so that we can continue to grow and to take the steps we need to keep that high standard as a program.
Yeah, and with the transfer portal as well, it does. It is making things much easier to do, much easier to transfer. But at the end of the day, if you're still not, a good teammate and you're not actually a what's the word? You're not adding stuff to your program, even if you're wanting to transfer because you're not playing, as long as you're putting in the effort and stuff, if you're not doing that, coaches talk. Like it's college soccer, there's hundreds of teams, it's a massive country, but there's always connections and it's so easy to pick up the phone. He's at UMFK, I'm going to phone the coach and see, how's Tom? Oh, he's an idiot. Okay, thanks. Thanks, but no thanks kind of thing. So that reputation you build for yourself the first weeks, the first months, that you're at the school is going to be really important. I remember when I was leaving Fort Kent, I applied for absolutely everywhere. I applied for, I spoke to the coach at Honolulu or something, one of the Hawaii schools, and he was like, "Oh, you got UMFK. Your coach is Bill Ashby." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I know Bill. I used to work in Portland with him or something." And I was like, "Okay." And so that's people don't know their geography. It's literally the furthest two places you could get from each other in the USA. And yeah, there was a connection there. And that's back in the day, when social media was still small and people, yeah, it was much harder to communicate them and have connections like that. Nowadays, it's so much easier. And coaches are just going to pick up the phone, go on Facebook, go on Instagram, whatever, and send an email and find out what you're really like. So that personality, I think, goes a long way. It's not about how good you are, how, not about how good you are on the pitch. It's really about how rounded a person. Are you going to embarrass my program off the field in classes, or am I going to get reports? I know I struggled in a few classes at UMFK, and Ashby called me in his office a couple of times, telling him, Tom, you need to do better, you're not training. Okay, sorry, I will. And that's not something he needed. And I'm sure he would have probably been annoyed at whenever he had to do that kind of thing, and any coach would be. I don't think it affected my relationship with him. It only happened once or twice, I think. But I think, a team full of players like that were constantly failing, no coach is going to be happy with that. So really, just be a good person. Just be willing to work hard throughout, on and off the pitch. Be a good person. I think that's really important. Yeah. So let's just go on to our kind of last little thing. Is there any, if you've got one bit of advice, I can't speak right now, if you've got one bit of advice to give to a prospective student coming over from the UK, from the Europe, from Australia, what have you, moving to the USA, and they're just in their kind of first couple of weeks of exploring the option, what would your one piece of advice be to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think just be open and have a have a general idea of what you're looking for. Like I said, the US is so crazy. Like California is this whole nother world. The South completely different. The Northeast, you're dealing with weather, you're dealing with city versus rural, you're dealing with, and I think you talked about this in your last one. The level of play is so irrelevant to an extent, right? Like, don't people, you know, even kids here, once they get good players, it's he or she Division One? Are they Division One? Are they Division One? Again, to me, Division One experience is so overrated because it's a business and you get one crack at it, right? So have a general idea of what you're looking for. Having a person like you. So if you're a 17-year-old and you're trying to do this on your own in Europe, good luck. Like going through somebody in an organization like yourself who's seen it and done it, and they know. In the South, what people don't realize is how many schools are tied to the religious component of it, right? Obviously, in northern Maine, you're battling the weather. California, a little bit of traffic and craziness. And California's super competitive. There's so much talent. Georgia, I mean, a lot of talent here in Georgia. So even though you're going with some U.S. kids, some of those pockets are really good. Like when you went to Nebraska, there's some really good programs in Nebraska, don't get me wrong. But the level of play probably in Nebraska was a little bit less than probably what you experience in Maine. And again, the NAIA has a strong threshold in Iowa and Nebraska and some of the Midwest schools. Finding that right fit, again, like I said, are you okay going 8-8, but being a first team all conference player and leading your team in scoring? Or would you rather be on a team that's 14-2 competing for a national championship, but you're coming off the bench for it, right? Like, so finding what's there, because again, you got one crack at it. But I think for kids who are hearing this are probably interested in your organization, having that knowledge, having that experience, understanding that, hey, this person's going to know a lot about the school. I'm going to be able to paint a picture for you, and figuring out if that picture is really what you envision for the next 4 years. I think that's crucial. But be happy. I mean, that's the one thing, is go someplace where you're going to be happy, make the most of it, get out and about. For you, I think everybody who knows you knows that you're a social butterfly, right? I'm going to make friends with a football team. I'm going to make friends with a golf team. I'm going to make friends with a tennis team. I'm going to have friends from all over the world because it's cool. You get to learn, you culture yourself, you learn what not to wear and what to wear in locker rooms. But it gives you that kind of perspective on things, and it widens your network, because down the road, like you said, now all those little relationships you built through your years is going to help you. Like, your buddy you might have some friends at this school and that school in this area. We were talking about the kid from Rome, Georgia, who we got some mutual friends with. All of those contacts and connections will help you know what schools are what, and how to put and how to place kids properly. But for players, be a team first person, right? Make sure you got a good work ethic. Make sure that you know really what you want out of this. Like I said, you want to leave a legacy and be a starter and go someplace that's not the highest level. And then also figure out socially what type of environment you want to be in. New York City versus, Fort Kent, Maine versus, you know, random Nebraska, Midwest, all of that stuff, completely different experiences. But yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. If you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid looking to come to the States and looking to play college soccer, it's a fun time. It's an exciting time. Make the best of it, but be ready to work, be ready to compete. And again, some of the most impactful players that came through our program at Maine Fort Kent weren't necessarily the best players, but they were the best teammates that kept that glue together. So even if you're at a school and you're not playing a whole lot, if you're a good teammate and everybody likes you and respects you and you're a good locker room presence, that coach is going to respect you. You're going to be a big part of that team, even though you may not be scoring goals or making saves or anchoring the defense. Sometimes those off the field kids are just as important, and coaches will, so you may not leave a legacy on the field, but by leaving a legacy in the locker room and being that glue kid makes a big difference too. So always just make the most of your experience wherever you end up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like the the player who does all that stuff. What I wanted to do afterwards was become a coach. Probably moving to being a coach in college, and just didn't really work out for me. I think the players who do that, who are, I think like Jared Phillips, for example, he in the men's side, he was probably the best example of just what's the word, coaches, well, the coach's pet kind of thing. A little bit. He was always in Ashby's office, chatting to him. He was captain for a reason. Sounds like I'm bad mouthing Jared, brilliant guy, but he was very much like, I want to be the best in the locker room. I want to be a leader. I want to do all I can do to help both coach, both my teammates. I want to be the guy around campus. I want to be very well respected. And he's moved on to be coach. Now he's head of performance, I think it is, for which team's he at now? One of the MLS teams.
I think St. Louis City, I think.
St. Louis, yeah, but he's been at three or four different teams, and there's a reason why he got to where he is. It's not just the hard work; it's his personality and everything. Where other people who maybe were better players than him haven't had as good a career afterwards. Maybe not in football. Maybe some players went on to do a little bit better in the football side of things, playing wise. But then there's a long time, after a couple of years of probably professional football or whatever. Yeah, and that period in your college life and those connections you make, like you said, are going to be really, really important going forward, I think. So yeah, glad you mentioned that. Anything else you want to mention before we close up?
I mean, I think we covered it. Like I said, I'm excited for you and this journey. I think it's something that obviously kind of following in David Binney's footsteps with obviously getting a chance to see Downey and Jamie and yourself. I think Steven, Tom Coxon. There's probably at least 10 of you, I would think, that came from. Was it Sporting Futures? Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's what it was called.
You saw the impact that his organization had on you, and now you're going to be able to have that impact on others is fantastic. And again, that's why you coach, why you get into the business you are, is because you're going to open doors for kids. So that's just as rewarding, and it's something that's exciting to see. And being able to track these kids and hear from their playing experiences and stuff is will be a cool journey. So I'm glad you're doing this, and who knows, if I ever get back into the college game, I'll head over and visit, and we'll see if we can get some European kids coming to the U.S. and wherever I decide to settle in. But I appreciate the time, and I'll definitely be tracking your journey.
Appreciate it. And yeah, if you ever do get back into it, there could be worse coaches for me to send players. So let's just say you were a fan's favorite, a player's favorite, and a fan's favorite actually. Yeah, you were very well respected on and off the pitch, and we got on really well actually. So that's good. I don't know how to end these podcasts. It's the only second one we've done, so I think I'll just say thank you to Lucas for joining us, and I would like to say tune in next week, but it took me, I think, 4 weeks since my last one to get someone on. So tune in the next few weeks or something, and I'll have another brilliant podcast coming up. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone, and see you again.
Thanks, Tom. Take care.